Welcome to another session of Fly Tying Thursday, presented by Flatwater Fly Fishers. I'm John Wright, your host and the producer of Fly Tying Thursdays. Flatwater Fly Fishers is an organization dedicated to serving American veterans worldwide through the sport of fly fishing. Fly Tying Thursday is a recording, a weekly Zoom session originating in Omaha, Nebraska, every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time. We feature well-known tyers from around the world presenting demonstrations of their favorite flies. I hope you enjoy this video. More information can be found in the comments section below. If you like the video, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you get the announcements of the latest releases. Until next time, tight lines. This week featuring our very own Mike Kelly, tying the Herters Bastard Midge, the Deer Hair Midge, and the Palamino Midge.
Last week was streamers. We're going a lot smaller this week. So that's a graphic on just kind of showing what midges look like and what we do to represent them with flies. The middle one to me is probably where, at least that's where I think we should spend most of our time on. In the first stage, in the larval stage, for the most part, they're down in the mud, down in the debris, and although fish do eat midge larvae, sometimes they get dislodged, sometimes they, there's probably certain species that travel a little bit, especially in still waters. But that's not a very vulnerable stage of their life cycle, if you will. In the middle, there's a whole lot of variants of flies that we have to represent emerging midges. And so that's what we're going to be kind of focusing on tonight. And then the adult stage, for the most part, midges are so small that a lot of times something like a Griffith's gnat actually represents a cluster of midges that are all stuck together. And that's, to actually pick individual midges off when they're of size 26 or 28, they're not going to get full very fast. Also with an emerger, there's a lot more to it. So it's, you can get away with a little bit bigger fly to represent the insect. So let me go back to that. All right. So the first one we're going to do is the Herters Bastard Midge, designed by Steve Herter from Colorado. I like to do my emergers on dry fly hooks for the most part. The one in the picture is a pretty stout hook, but I like them to ride in the surface film and with the deer hair and that hackle. It's pretty likely to do that with just about any hook. The thread I'm using is just and I'll show you the materials here in a second. I'm just using like a UTC. It doesn't have to be Vivus 10-aught. It really depends on the size of the hook. The trailing shuck wood duck's kind of expensive. If you have it, it's beautiful, but mallard works just as good. And for that trailing shuck, you could even use some Antron or some other kind of hackle fibers. The back and the legs and antennae that stick out when the insect's emerging, is going to be bleached elk or deer hair. And you could do these in any colors. You could do them in larger sizes, olive or different colors to even represent emerging mayflies if you want. Most of the time, midges, I do black or red for the most part. And then the hackle on this is grizzly in a smaller size. And so this is the fly. This is where we're going. I'll switch over to the materials. And again, the tail, I'm going to use mallard flank. The thread I'm using is a 70 denier ultra thread UTC. These Whiting 100 packs are a real cheap way to get good quality hackle, and a lot of times they're sized for what you're looking for. Sometimes there's a little variance in there. You might find some 16, you might find some 12, but for the most part, it's right around 14. And then I have some Nature Spirit bleached deer hair. You could use bleached elk. You could use natural elk. Just, substitute as you need to. So I've already got some materials kind of pre-selected to make it go a little faster. All right. So again, I'm using a dry fly hook, size 14. And the first thing I'm going to do is just lay down a base of thread. Back to about there. And then if you take your mallard flank, zoom out a little bit. If you have I have a bag of mallard flank feathers. Some of them are symmetrical. Some of them are curved, a little bit damaged. I'm just using this as a trailing shuck, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So the feathers that are a little bit curved, longer on one side than the other, doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to separate out some barbs to where they're about, tips are pretty much lined up, and then cut that out of the way. And I want this to be about a hook shank in length. So I'm going to lean it towards me a little bit. Oops, and tie it down. Coming forward and making a nice smooth body. I'm going to back up so I can cut these a little easier. Slightly. And now I want to go all the way to the eye of the hook here. And then I want to select some of this deer hair. And really, I want about, maybe 12 to 15 hairs. So I'm going to take a little bit more than what I need. Isolate that out, and then I'll cut that away from the skin. And then I'll just grab it by the tips. I've got some broken tips in there and a lot of under fur. So I'm just going to clean that all out. Take a look at what I think I got rid of most of those broken tips, but we'll see after I stack it. Now I want the tips of the hairs to be facing forward, so that's how I want to take it out of the stacker. I don't want to take them out with the tips pointing that way, otherwise I have to switch it around in my hands and then it won't be lined up anymore. Now, there's a couple of broken tips in there, and since they're thicker in diameter, usually you can reach in there with your nail and pull those right out. There's another one that's a little bit further down. So I've got about the right amount and they're still pretty much lined up. So again, about a shank length past the eye. So I'm going to take a soft wrap all the way around and then another one. And then I'm going to cinch down. I don't want that to flare a whole lot. So just kind of medium wraps, but then as I go back, I can get nice and tight. Now, in order to grab that hair, I'm going to have to go with spaced wraps here at first. Trying to keep it on top as much as possible. Back to the back. Got a broken tip in there. Now I'll just take my thread, and if you spin it counterclockwise as if you're looking down on it, that'll flatten the thread and make it easier to make a nice smooth body. Every once in a while, just spin it. And I want to come to about maybe a third of the way from the eye back to the end of the shank. And then just like a humpy, I'm going to take these hairs and fold them forward. Tie that all off nice. And then I'll come in. Nice fine scissor points. And cut those loose. Now I'll smooth that area off. Come back. And now I have that one of those long saddle hackles. So with the shiny side facing me, I'm going to strip off some barbs. And then on the top, as it's facing me, I'm going to strip just a few more off. So then the leading edge will have a little bit of bare stem to start with. And that's just going to give me a cleaner wrap of hackle. And that's a little bit long. I'll just wrap over that red. And it's fine if a little bit of that red shows through. You want about 5 or 6 wraps of hackle there. And then I'll tie it down. Come back to the eye. And then I'll cut that hackle stem. And then you want the wing to cant forward like that. And then I had a shorter deer hair in there. I'll cut that out of the way. And that's a Herters Bastard Midge. You can actually use floatant. Like if you have a gel floatant, you can grease the hackle and the front part of the wing and let the rest of this part kind of hang down in the surface film a little bit. Or you can just fish it like it is. If it starts to sink a little bit, then maybe you can dress it. But I bet that'll be a really good fly in the driftless down in Missouri, Black Hills. And I'll use this in Colorado and let you know how it goes. The next one is I saw this done by Barry Ord Clark. I think it's his creation. It's kind of a fun fly to tie. Has some techniques that we haven't really covered at all. So the way he ties it is on a scud hook. You don't need a scud hook. I'll do it on a scud hook here because I have one. But again, you could use any dry fly hook. It's a the tying thread, you can base it on the color. For the most part, because we're using moose mane for the body, anything browns and olives are probably appropriate, but if all you have is black thread, that's fine too. And then the wing is a CDC puff. I don't have CDC puffs, but I'll show you how to kind of make do. And then the thorax is super fine dubbing or whatever you have available. Definitely not a guide fly because there's quite a bit to the fly to tying it. But I'll go ahead to the materials. So for deer hair, I'm just going to use this. It's actually a sculpin olive It's just like a brown olive, big bug hair. Moose mane is what's used for the body. And moose body hair is a little bit more black um, in color. Uh, a lot of times the moose mane, you'll have white, brown, and black kind of mixed in there. And uh, ideally, the way he ties it is a black, a brown, and a white. If all you can get is you just want to at least have a white and a black so you get the contrast to the body. I'm just going to use the best I can find with CDC, and I have some super fine dubbing here. I'm going to use on this one. I'm going to use a Semperfli Nano Silk. And we've got everything ready over here. I already have some moose hairs picked out and some close to CDC puffs, but I've got 2 or 3 of them there. And that's what I'll use for that. Okay. So since I'm using the Semperfli Nano Silk, it's real slippery thread. I'm going to use some thread wax. Not necessary if you're not using this thread. I got by just fine when I didn't have it. You just have to make sure you leave a long tag end and just take a lot of wraps over it to make sure it gets secured on the hook. But that thread wax helps it grip. And so after taking a few turns, it's not going to pull out. Start the thread, and then the tail on this fly. Start right about there. I'm going to take kind of a similar amount to what I used for the back and the wing on that midge fly. This is real nice long deer hair. I'm just going to grab the tips here and then just clean out all of this junk, that the shorter hairs and the under fur. And I actually have a comb that I'll run through there. I don't have a static problem like Al does. Just want to make sure that's all nice and cleaned out. And then I'll stack it. Now, I've got quite a few too many, but I see there's some shorter ones in here. So I'm just going to grab these longer butts here and then just take all of that off. That'll give me a little bit closer, maybe take a few more of those away. I'll stack it one more time. And now I just want a short tail. No more than a hook gap. I'm going to take some kind of medium wraps. I do want that tail to flare a little bit. So holding it in place, I'm going to flare the tail. And then I'm going to start going forward again in spaced wraps, because I want all of these butt ends to I'm going to actually use those later in the fly. So trying to keep it on top as much as possible. I'm going to go all the way to the eye. And then I don't need them to be that long, so I think I'm going to cut these to about an inch. It'll just give me a little bit more room to work with. Now, for the moose mane, I have this is pretty much a white and then a couple of blacks, or darker ones anyway. And I don't need the really fine tips on there, so I'm going to cut off about a half an inch just to make sure all those tips are lined up, and I'm down into the thicker diameter of the hair a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and tie that in. Back to the end. And then I'll come back forward to again about that same place, about a third of the way back from the eye. And now, it's like I already lost a moose hair, but I think I'm going to be able to be fine with just two. So I'm going to take those hairs and wrap forward, and you can see how that gives it a really nice segmented body. I don't want them to twist too much here. Just to make sure I don't lose everything, every once in a while I'm just going to hold it in place. Just need a few more turns here. That should be plenty. And then I'll tie that down, and I can just actually leave those in with the rest of that hair hanging out over the eye of the hook. And then I'll come back to that 1/3 point, and this is where I tie in the CDC. Now, if you have a CDC puff, and I'll show you the differences here. CDC feathers, they can be oval, they can be a little bit more flat on the top, but they have some that are really short and full and bushy. I have two that are kind of halfway bushy. And what he actually does, actual CDC puff will be flat across the top and just real bushy in here. And what he does is he ties that in so that the tips are tied down, and then he cuts the rest to make the wing. It's kind of a unique wing. I think in this case, the best I can get out of these two, they're different sizes, different lengths. And I think the bushiest that I can get out of that is to actually tie these in by the butts. And just make do with what I have. So that'll be my wing. I'm just going to kind of stand it up a little bit here with a couple thread wraps. All right, now I'm going to take some of this super fine dubbing. I think this brown olive is pretty good match to what I'm doing here. So I'm going to take some in my hand here and just take a few, just a little wisp right there. Turn it to the side a little bit so I have some room to work away from the hook point. And then just twist that on in one direction. Grab a few more. If you take your time with dubbing, you can twist it on a whole lot easier than if you try to rush it and put on too much at one time. If you run out, just grab a little bit more. And if you do it a little bit at a time, you can add it to make it thicker if you want. Just by adding on top of what you did before. That looks like a pretty good dubbing noodle. So what I want to do is wrap forward here. To kind of build up a little bit of a thorax here in front. And a little bit behind that wing. And then I'll stop right behind the wing. And then I'm going to turn it towards me and try to split those hairs to where they're fairly even clumps. And then I'm going to take around the back side. Try to do this so you can see it. Take that clump around the back side and tie it down. Couple good tight wraps. And then take the other half.
Wetting that CDC puff so it's less
And
likely.
tie it down.
Mike, what about wetting that CDC puff? Would
I
that
just
help?
did. I just moistened it a little bit.
Ah, okay, I couldn't
That
see.
does help. Now, I'll take these real fine point scissors. These are Renomed scissors. Get in there and cut all that loose behind the wing. One more of that broke loose. Now, just to make sure that all stays put, I'm going to take a couple more wraps here. And then I'll go back to my dubbing. Take a little bit. Of dubbing there. And I'll just use that to clean up. And then right in front of the wing, whip finish. Don't pull that nano silk too tight or you're going to cut right through the deer hair. But it was nice and snug. Now with that wing, cut it at about a hook gap like that. and then just kind of smoosh it down. And there's the wing. And that is a deer hair midge by Barry Ord Clark.
Quick question. If
How'd we
you
do
didn't
for-
have the nano silk, what would you use in place of that?
Any thread on something this small. This is a 14. I'd probably try to use like a 70 denier. Like I used that red, like a 70 denier. You don't really have to do a lot with the deer hair. It's not like you need a really strong thread, like you're spinning or stacking deer hair. But that's kind of a fun little fly with that segmented body and the head folded back, kind of like a bubble may. Or some hopper heads are folded back like that. And I only took 40 minutes. So maybe I'll do another midge. How about see if I have the stuff for a Palamino Midge. There we go. Do it in maybe olive. This could actually be like a blue-winged olive. Or where's my polygon? And peacock curls, the only other thing I need and be able to get her done here. Okay, this one, I don't have a picture, but I'll do this one in olive with a gray wing. You could use it as a, which I'm probably going to see here in the fall. Batis emerger, but it could be used as for a midge or even a mayfly emerger. So I'm just going to use an olive thread, this is that ultra chenille, just the real fine stuff. And then I have some gray polypro yarn, peacock herl, and that's about it. So I'll switch to the hook. All I really have loaded right now is this nano silk. So again, I'm just going to use some thread wax just to run it through there about 3 or 4 times. Sometimes it'll kind of split the thread out, but it makes it real tacky and want to grip. If you don't have thread wax, dubbing wax, it just gets a little, since that's a little bit more tacky, a little looser, it can get kind of messy. Where this stuff is, nice and dry like a paraffin, but like you could use just a dubbing wax like that.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, Mike, but I think beeswax it probably work too.
Any wax like that is going to just give it a little bit more friction, a little more little bit more grip. So
But have fun cutting it off the hook once you've waxed it on. The wax really makes it adhere to the hook with
makes it a little
nano
grippy.
cells.
Um, you're gonna get to see me use fire too. So you're lucky tonight. I'm gonna make this tail kind of exaggerated in length here. But I just want to tie this down with a couple of good tight wraps here at the back. And then I want some of that fuzzy green to just kind of stay there. So I'm just basically kind of ribbing over that, kind of spaced wraps, keeping it on top. And then I'll cut that loose, tie it down. And then I'll take a couple strands of peacock herl, about 3. I'm going to line up the butts just so I don't kind of lose control of things. So I'll line up the butts of that peacock herl like that. And then I'll go out to the ends and just cut off, for one thing, to make them even. But when you get out to this 3/4 of an inch out at the end of each of these, it gets pretty brittle and breaks easily. So I'll just cut that off. So now I have even getting ahead of myself. Next thing we want to tie in is the wing. So I have this polypropylene yarn. This is a light gray. I'm going to cut it because I don't like those bends. I'm going to cut it at the end of the card. And then let me zoom out a little bit. You have to kind of, this kinks for one thing around the card, but it also just has kind of a twist every once in a while. And so you got to kind of separate it. I have probably enough there that I'll just do it like it is there. So just to give a nice smooth edge there, cut it again, just cut a little bit off. Tie that down nice and tight. That's going to be too much. I think that's going to be too much. I'm going to call an audible here and just split that and use about half of it. Now I split that in half. Again, I'm going to cut it to where it's even tips and tie that down. That's going to be a little bit more workable on this size of a hook. So I'll leave that leaning backwards. Then I'll take my 3 peacock herls, tie those in. And I'll come right back to the pearls, lengthen my thread a little bit, and then just take those pearls and twist them around the thread. about 10 times, and then I'll just twist it a little bit more just to kind of make sure that goes around the thread pretty good. And then I'll just wrap that forward. Towards the eye. I don't want to crowd it too much. And I can go back over it a little bit just to kind of make it a little thicker. And then untwist those from the thread. And make sure that's tied off good. And that'll keep that peacock herl from breaking on a fish's tooth. Then I'm going to fold this forward, take a couple wraps over it. Not too tight. Because then what I'll do is go in with my bodkin and just stretch that, kind of make a little bit of a bubble there. What that's going to do is trap some air. And when it traps air, that's going to give it a shiny spot in there, and also give it a little bit of flotation. I want a little bit more bulk there. There we go. And then this doesn't bulk very fast, this nano silk, but I still want to put a little bit of a dam there so that I stand that wing up. Whip finish. Nice and tight. All right, now for the wing, I want it to be about a hook shank in length. So I can kind of measure it with my scissors just to kind of give myself an eyeball. And got that loose. And then for the tail, kind of the same thing. Just kind of eyeball it there. And I'll cut it loose. And then with that end there, move my light a little bit. Just kind of singe that to a nice point. For one thing, that kind of protects it from unfraying, but it gives it kind of a natural little point there. That's a Palamino. So that's going to be a bluing olive emerger for me. And
Nice fly, Mike. Al had to run.
okay, since I probably got glue in that eye, I have a little bit of a hackle here. I'll just pull it through the eye. No more glue.